Dae-ho rubbed his temples as another wave of pain shot through his skull. The headache had started 3 days ago, right when he entered the shattered belt. This region of space was supposed to be empty, just debris and old wrecks from a war that ended centuries before humans even left Earth. Nobody came here anymore. That made it perfect for his cargo route, cutting weeks off his delivery time. His ship, the Wandering Stone, wasn't much to look at. It was a small freighter, patched together with spare parts from a dozen different colonies. The hull had scorch marks from atmospheric entries, and the engines made a grinding sound that probably meant something expensive was about to break. But it was his, paid for with 10 years of backbreaking work on colony worlds that most species wouldn't even visit. The headache pulsed again. Stronger this time. Dae-ho groaned and checked his medical scanner. Nothing. Blood pressure normal, no signs of illness, no radiation exposure. He'd been through worse on the ice mining colonies of Kylar 7. This was probably just stress or bad coffee. Then he heard it. Not with his ears, but inside his head. A voice, ancient and tired, calling out, "Help! Please! Anyone!" Dae-ho sat up straight in his pilot chair. "What the hell?" The voice came again, weaker this time. "My child! Dying! Please!" He checked his communication systems. Nothing on any channel. No distress beacons, no emergency frequencies, no standard signals at all. But that voice was real. He knew it was real. It felt like someone was pressing their thoughts directly into his brain. Dae-ho had heard stories about telepathic aliens, species that could talk mind to mind. The galaxy was full of strange things. Humanity was actually pretty boring compared to most of the aliens out there. Humans couldn't read minds, couldn't see in 12 different spectrums, couldn't survive in the vacuum of space. They were just tough and stubborn and too stupid to know when to quit. He traced the direction of the voice. It was coming from deeper in the shattered belt, from a cluster of ancient wrecks that his scanner marked as dangerous. Ships went in there and sometimes didn't come out. Navigation hazards, unstable debris fields, the usual warnings. Dae-ho drummed his fingers on the console. He had a delivery deadline. The colony on Begzar 9 was waiting for their medical supplies. If he was late, people might die. But that voice, that desperate plea, it reminded him of something, someone, his little sister, Bo-Ra. She'd been sick on the colony where they grew up. The supply ships had been delayed. He'd watched her get weaker and weaker, calling for help that came too late. She was only 12 when she died. "Damn it," Dae-ho muttered. He changed course, steering the Wandering Stone toward the heart of the debris field. The ship groaned as he navigated through the wreckage. Huge pieces of alien vessels floated past his viewports, their hulls torn open by weapons that humanity had never seen. This had been a massive battle once. Thousands, maybe millions, had died here. The thought made him uncomfortable. The voice grew stronger, closer. "This way. Please hurry." I'm coming," Dae-ho said out loud, even though he wasn't sure the voice could hear him. "Try not to die before I get there." His scanner picked up something ahead. A ship. Bigger than anything he'd ever seen, shaped like a massive crystal cathedral. It was ancient, covered in symbols that his computer couldn't translate. Part of it was shattered, open to space, but some sections still had power. Faint lights glowed in the darkness. Dae-ho brought his ship alongside and suited up. His pressure suit was old, patched in a dozen places, but it held. He grabbed his toolkit and a medical scanner, not sure what he'd find, but wanting to be prepared. The airlock of the ancient ship was still functional. It recognized his presence and opened, pulling him into a corridor that smelled like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. Gravity was still working here, set to about Earth standard. Lucky for him. He followed the voice through winding corridors filled with strange technology. Everything was built on a huge scale, meant for beings much larger than humans. Finally, he reached a massive chamber that might have been a temple or a throne room. That's where he saw the dragon. It was the only word Dae-ho could think of. The creature was enormous, easily 15 meters long, with scales that looked like purple crystal. 4 legs, 2 massive wings folded against its back, a long neck ending in a head that had too many eyes. It was lying on the floor, struggling to breathe. When it saw Dae-ho, those eyes focused on him. The voice in his head became clear, no longer a distant call but a direct communication. "You came," the dragon said, wonder in its mental voice. "You heard me. I have been calling for weeks, months. No one answered. The entire galaxy ignored my plea. But you, small one, you came." Dae-ho approached carefully. "Yeah, well, I heard you. Where's the patient?" The dragon shifted, and Dae-ho saw a smaller shape curled against its body. A baby dragon, no bigger than a large dog, with scales that had lost their shine. The little one was barely breathing. "My daughter, young me," the dragon said. "She is infected with void rot, a parasite that turns flesh to stone. I am Vaxrith, last of the Sirakath. We were once the guardians of this galaxy. Now we are forgotten, and my child dies while I watch." Dae-ho knelt beside the small dragon, pulling out his medical scanner. "Let me see what I can do." Dae-ho ran his medical scanner over young Mi's small body. The readings made him wince. Her internal temperature was dropping, her organs were hardening, and something was spreading through her bloodstream like liquid metal. The scanner identified it as a silicon-based life form, a parasite that was literally turning the young dragon into stone from the inside out. "How long has she been like this?" Dae-ho asked. Vaxrith's mental voice trembled with grief. 3 months. It started as a small infection after she explored an abandoned station. I tried everything. Called every medical facility in this sector. No one would help. The Sirakath are from an older age, and the younger species see us as relics, irrelevant. "That's messed up," Dae-ho said simply. He sat back on his heels and thought. The void rot was nasty, but it was still a biological organism. Every organism had a weakness. "What about the cure? There's got to be something that kills this thing." "There is," Vaxrith said. "The crimson bloom, a fungal organism found only on the world called Kalor-9. It produces enzymes that break down silicon structures. But Kalor-9 is classified as a death world. Temperatures range from 200 degrees to minus 150. Acid storms, predatory crystalline life forms. Every expedition sent there has failed. 90% mortality rate." Dae-ho nodded slowly. "Okay, so I need to go to Kalor-9, find this crimson bloom, bring it back and make a cure. How long does young me have?" 2 weeks, perhaps 3 at most. "Then we better get moving." Dae-ho stood and headed back toward his ship. Vaxrith's voice filled his mind with confusion. "You speak as if this is a simple task. Human, do you not understand? Kalor-9 has killed hundreds of trained explorers. Species far more durable than yours have perished there." Dae-ho stopped and turned back. "Look, I've worked on colony worlds that'd make your scales curl. Ice worlds where the atmosphere froze solid at night. Desert planets where the sand was hot enough to melt steel. Ocean worlds with pressure that could crush a shuttle like a tin can. We humans, we're kind of good at surviving places that should kill us." "But why?" Vaxrith asked. "Why would you risk your life for my child? You do not know us. There is no profit in this, no alliance to gain. Your species is not known for martial strength or political power. You are the quiet ones, the ones who stay in the background. Why would you do this?" Dae-ho was quiet for a moment. He thought about Bo-Ra, about watching her die because help came too late. He thought about all the times people had told him something was impossible and he'd done it anyway because someone had to. "Because you asked," he said finally. because your kid's dying and I can maybe help. That's enough." He returned to his ship and started pulling out equipment. Environmental suits, spare oxygen tanks, portable heaters and coolers, climbing gear, weapons. Vaxrith watched through the open airlock, his massive form barely fitting in Deho's cargo bay as he helped move supplies with telekinetic power. "I do not understand your species," Vaxrith said as Deho checked his pressure suit seals. "In my youth, thousands of years ago, I knew a race called the Molthar. They were warriors, brave and fierce. But even they would not attempt what you are planning. They would calculate the odds and refuse." "Yeah, well, humans aren't great at math," Deho said with a slight smile. "We tend to do things because they need doing, not because they make sense." He pulled up star charts and plotted a course to Kalor 9. It would take 4 days at maximum speed. That left about 10 days to find the Crimson Bloom and get back. Tight, but possible. Before he left, Deho set up a biosupport field around young Mai. It wouldn't cure her, but it would slow the Void Rot's progress. He showed Vaxrith how to monitor her vital signs and adjust the settings if needed. "If I'm not back in 12 days, assume I failed," Deho said bluntly. "The colony on Bexar 9 is waiting for medical supplies. Someone needs to deliver them. My ship's navigation computer has the route." "You would have me abandon my child to deliver cargo?" Vaxrith asked, shocked. "No. I'd have you make sure people don't die because I decided to play hero. If young me passes, at least someone else lives. That's how it works." Vaxrith was silent for a long moment. Then his voice came, softer than before. "You lost someone. I can sense it in your thoughts. A young one, like my young me." Deho's jaw tightened. "My sister. Colony world, supply delays, disease that should have been easy to cure. She was 12. So yeah, I know what it's like to watch someone die because help didn't come fast enough. I'm not letting that happen again if I can stop it." The dragon lowered his massive head until one huge eye was level with Deho. "Then go, human. Bring back the cure. Save my daughter. And know that the Sirakath do not forget debts." Deho climbed into his ship and sealed the airlock. He took one last look at the ancient temple ship, at the dying dragon tending his child, and felt that old, familiar stubbornness settle into his bones. The kind that had gotten him through ice storms and heat waves and every other impossible situation he'd faced. "Kalor 9, he said to his ship's computer. "Maximum burn. And pull up everything we have on extreme environment survival. I've got a feeling I'm going to need it." The Wandering Stone pulled away from the temple ship and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind him, Vaxrith watched the stars where the human had vanished and felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. Kalor 9 looked like a nightmare from space. The planet's surface was split between volcanoes that glowed bright orange and ice fields that reflected harsh white light. Storms swirled across the surface, colored sickly green from the acidic compounds in the atmosphere. Deho's scanner was screaming warnings before he even entered orbit. Yeah, I know it's dangerous," he muttered, silencing the alarms. "Tell me something useful." The computer displayed data on the Crimson Bloom. It grew in the thermal vents between the volcanic and frozen regions, places where the temperature fluctuated wildly but provided the exact conditions the fungus needed. There were 3 known locations. The nearest was about 50 kilometers from a safe landing zone. Deho suited up in his best environmental gear. The suit was rated for extreme temperatures, but Kalor 9 was going to test its limits. He packed spare power cells, emergency oxygen, climbing equipment, and a plasma cutter. His sidearm went on his hip. The scanner said there were indigenous life forms down there, and not the friendly kind. The landing was rough. Wind speeds were hitting 200 kilometers per hour, and his ship wasn't built for atmospheric combat with the elements. The Wandering Stone shook like it was going to tear apart, but Deho kept her steady. He touched down on a rocky plateau between a lava flow and a glacier. The moment he stepped outside, the temperature gauge in his suit jumped to 180 degrees. Heat radiated from the ground, making the air shimmer. Daeho activated his suit's cooling system and started walking toward the thermal vent region. The landscape was alien and hostile. Black volcanic glass crunched under his boots. Geysers of superheated steam erupted without warning, forcing him to change his path constantly. In the distance, he could see the massive glacier, its surface a deep blue that was almost beautiful. 3 hours into the trek, his suit's cooling system failed. The temperature inside his suit started climbing immediately. Daeho cursed and stopped, pulling out his toolkit. The coolant line had cracked, probably from the extreme temperature differential. He patched it with sealant tape and rerouted the coolant through a backup line. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold. He kept moving. The ground began to slope downward into a valley where lava met ice. This was where the crimson bloom grew. Steam filled the air, so thick Daeho could barely see 10 meters ahead. His scanner guided him forward, beeping steadily as it detected organic compounds that matched the fungus. Then something moved in the steam. Daeho froze. His hand went to his sidearm. The shape moved closer, and he got his first look at Kalor 9's native predators. It looked like a wolf made of crystal, all sharp angles and edges. Its body was transparent, barely visible in the steam. Eyes that glowed red locked onto him. Then it howled, a sound like breaking glass, and 3 more appeared from the mist. "Of course," Daeho said. "Why wouldn't there be crystal wolves?" The first one charged. Daeho drew his plasma pistol and fired. The shot hit the creature's shoulder, cracking its crystalline structure. It stumbled but kept coming. He fired twice more, shattering its front leg. The wolf collapsed, but the others were already moving. Daeho ran. He wasn't a fighter. He was a cargo hauler who knew how to fix engines and survive harsh environments. But he'd learned early that sometimes survival meant running smart, not standing and fighting. The crystal wolves were fast, but they had trouble with the uneven terrain. Daeho jumped over a lava stream, his suit's heat shielding flaring as he passed through the thermal radiation. One wolf tried to follow and slipped, falling into the molten rock. Its crystal body shattered from the thermal shock. 2 left. Daeho spotted an ice cliff ahead and changed direction. The wolves followed, their claws scraping on volcanic glass. He reached the cliff and started climbing. His suit's gloves struggled for grip on the frozen surface, but years of working in low-gravity environments had made him good at climbing. The wolves reached the base of the cliff and stared up at him with those glowing eyes. Then they started climbing too, their crystalline claws finding purchase in the ice. At the top of the cliff, Daeho found what he was looking for, a thermal vent, steam pouring from a crack in the ice, and growing around it, patches of deep red fungus, the crimson bloom. He pulled out a collection container and started scraping samples into it. His hands shook, partially from adrenaline and partially from the cold. This side of the valley was easily minus 100 degrees. His suit was switching from cooling to heating mode, struggling to compensate. A crystal wolf pulled itself over the edge of the cliff. Daeho didn't think. He grabbed his plasma cutter, set it to maximum, and swung it at the thermal vent. The superheated tool hit the ice, and the entire vent exploded outward in a blast of steam and boiling water. The wolf was caught in the blast. Its crystal body couldn't handle the thermal shock. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. The last wolf, seeing its pack destroyed, turned and fled back down the cliff. Daeho collapsed against the ice, breathing hard. His suit was beeping warnings about power levels and temperature regulation stress. He had the crimson bloom, but he was 50 kilometers from his ship, injured, low on power, and the suit wouldn't last much longer. He activated his comm. "Vaxrith, you there?" The dragon's voice filled his mind immediately. "I am here, human. Your vital signs are concerning. Are you injured?" "Yeah, a bit. But I got what we need. I'm heading back to the ship. How's young me? Stable, but fading. The bio-support field is slowing the void rot, but not stopping it. You must hurry. Always in a rush, Daeho muttered. He secured the collection container and started the long walk back to the Wandering Stone. The journey back was a blur of pain and determination. His suit's heating failed halfway through. His leg, injured in the fight, started bleeding inside his suit. The wound froze in the cold sections, then burned in the hot sections. Every step was agony, but he kept walking, because a little girl was dying and he had the cure in his hands. Because he'd promised. Because that's what humans did. Daeho barely remembered the flight back. His leg was badly injured, his suit was held together with emergency patches, and he'd pushed his ship's engines past their safety limits. But he made it back to the shattered belt in 3 days, running on coffee and stubborn refusal to fail. Vaxrith pulled him aboard the temple ship with telekinetic power the moment he arrived. The dragon's mental voice was filled with relief and concern. You look half dead, human. Only half? I'm doing better than I thought. Daeho limped to where young me lay in the bio-support field. She looked worse than before, her scales dull and her breathing shallow. Let's get to work. He set up a portable lab using equipment from his ship and the ancient medical facilities in the temple ship. The crimson bloom had to be processed carefully. The enzymes that broke down silicon needed to be extracted and refined, then mixed with a stabilizing agent that wouldn't harm young me's biology. It took 2 days of constant work. Daeho didn't sleep, surviving on stimulants and determination. Vaxrith watched him work, amazed at the human's focus despite his injuries. Several times the dragon insisted Daeho rest, but he refused. I'll rest when young me is breathing normally, Daeho said, adjusting the chemical processor. We're too close to stop now. Finally, he had it. A clear liquid in a medical injector, containing the refined enzymes. His hands shook as he approached young Mai. This had to work. It had to. If this goes wrong, Vaxrith began. It won't, Daeho interrupted. I didn't survive Kalor 9 for this to fail now. He administered the injection. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then young me's body began to glow softly, a warm light spreading from where the medicine entered her bloodstream. The stone-like patches on her scales began to crack and fall away, revealing healthy purple crystal underneath. Her breathing deepened, strengthened. Her eyes fluttered open. Father, she said, her mental voice weak but clear. Vaxrith made a sound that was half sob, half roar. He nuzzled his daughter gently, tears streaming from his many eyes. Yes, little one, I am here. You are safe now. Young me looked at Daeho with curious eyes. Who is the small one? This is Daeho, Vaxrith said. A human. He saved your life. Daeho smiled tiredly. Hey there, kid. Welcome back. Then his leg gave out, and he collapsed. The adrenaline and stimulants finally wore off, and his body shut down. Vaxrith caught him with telekinesis before he hit the ground. While Daeho recovered, word of what happened spread across the galaxy. It started small, rumors on trading stations and communication networks. A human had answered the Sirakath's call. A human had survived Kalor 9. A human had saved a life when the entire galaxy had ignored the plea for help. The story reached the Galactic Council, the governing body that managed relations between hundreds of species. They convened a special session to discuss it. Counselor Thex, an insectoid being with a crystalline exoskeleton, addressed the assembly. This human's actions are illogical. He risked his life, damaged his ship, and delayed his cargo delivery to save an alien child. He gained no profit, no political advantage, no strategic benefit. Explain this behavior. Ambassador Han Sol, representing humanity, stood at the podium. He was an older man, tired from years of diplomatic service, and he looked at the council with barely concealed frustration. "You want me to explain why a human helped someone in need?" Han Sol said. "It's simple. Because someone asked for help. Because a child was dying. Because it was the right thing to do." "But the probability of success was minimal," another counselor argued. "Any rational being would have calculated the risk and declined." "Humans aren't always rational," Han Sol replied. "We do things because they need doing, not because they make logical sense. We climb mountains because they're there. We explore space because we're curious. We help others because we remember what it's like to need help." The council was silent. The concept seemed foreign to them. "Your species lacks our evolutionary advantages," Thex said finally. "You cannot survive vacuum, cannot process most toxins, cannot even see beyond a narrow spectrum of light. Yet you persist in the most hostile environments. Why?" Han Sol smiled slightly. "Because we're too stubborn to know when to quit. Because we've survived ice ages and plagues and wars, and we're still here. Because every human remembers that we came from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we thrived anyway." He pulled up a holographic display showing Kalor 9. "This planet has a 90% mortality rate, but Deho went there anyway. Not because he's special, because any human would have done the same thing if they'd heard that call for help." The council dissolved into debate. Some argued that humanity's behavior was dangerous, unpredictable. Others suggested that perhaps the galaxy had lost something important in its evolution toward pure logic and efficiency. Back in the Shattered Belt, Deho woke up to find young Mi curled up next to him. She'd been watching him sleep, fascinated by the strange creature who had saved her life. "You are very small," she observed, "and your skin is soft. How do you survive?" Deho laughed. "Carefully, and with a lot of duct tape." Vaxrith approached, his massive form filling the chamber. "The galaxy is talking about what you did, human. Many species are confused. They do not understand why you helped us." "Do they need to understand?" Deho asked. "I mean, helping people isn't complicated. Someone needs help. You help them if you can. That's it." "It is not so simple for other species," Vaxrith said. "They have evolved past instinct, past what they call primitive emotions. They filter out suffering because it is inefficient. They ignore cries for help because the probability of successful aid is too low." "That's messed up," Deho said bluntly. "Indeed," Vaxrith agreed. "They have become so civilized that they forgot what it means to care." Young Mai nuzzled against Deho's side. "Can I stay with you? I want to learn about humans." Deho looked at Vaxrith, who nodded. "She bonds quickly, and I believe it would be good for her to see the galaxy through human eyes. Perhaps she can remind our people of what we once were." "Sure, kid," Deho said, scratching behind young Mi's crystal scales. "You can ride with me, but you're helping with engine maintenance." 3 weeks later, Deho's ship was docked at a repair station orbiting a trading hub. His leg had healed mostly, though he still walked with a slight limp. Young Mi was curled up in the cargo bay, fascinated by the various pieces of human technology scattered around. Vaxrith had followed them here, his massive temple ship drawing attention from every vessel in the sector. The ancient dragon had business to complete, he said, a debt to settle. "You don't owe me anything," Deho said for the 10th time. "Young Mi's healthy, that's payment enough." "You do not understand," Vaxrith replied, his mental voice firm. "The Syrakath do not forget debts. You saved my daughter's life at great personal risk. By our ancient laws, I owe you a life debt. My lineage is bound to yours until the debt is repaid." "That sounds complicated." "It is the highest honor my people can bestow." Vaxrith lowered his massive head. "In all my thousands of years, I have never declared a life debt. But you, human, you earned it." Deho shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I just did what needed doing. Any decent person would have helped." That is precisely why the debt exists, Vaxrith said, because you did not help for reward or recognition. You helped because a child was dying and you could not ignore that suffering. The galaxy has forgotten how to do this. He gestured with one clawed hand, and holographic images appeared in the air. Images of the Sirakath in their prime, thousands of years ago. They had been guardians once, protectors of the weak, answerers of distress calls across the galaxy. We evolved, Vaxrith said bitterly. We became wise and logical. We developed filters for our telepathic abilities, blocking out the cries of suffering because they were inefficient, distracting. We told ourselves this was progress. Civilization. The images shifted, showing the slow decline of the Sirakath. Fewer and fewer of them, until only Vaxrith and young me remained. We forgot how to care, Vaxrith continued, and in forgetting, we lost ourselves. The other species followed the same path. They evolved beyond instinct, beyond emotion, beyond the primitive urge to help those in need. They became efficient, logical, cold. But we humans haven't evolved that far yet, Deho said, understanding. Exactly. Your species still feels the cries in the dark. You still respond to suffering, even when it is illogical to do so. You are what we once were, before we became too civilized to care. Young me approached, her scales now bright and healthy. Father says humans are the hearthkeepers now. What does that mean? Deho looked at Vaxrith questioningly. In the old language there is a term, the dragon explained. Those who tend the fire when others have let it die. Those who keep the warmth alive in the cold universe. The Sirakath were once hearthkeepers. Now it seems humanity has taken that role. Word of the life debt spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species watched with curiosity and confusion. Some dismissed it as primitive sentimentality, but others began to question. In the weeks that followed, something strange started happening. Old distress signals, the kind that had been filtered out by advanced species for centuries, began to be answered. And the ones answering them were humans. A mining colony trapped by a cave-in, a refugee ship with failing life support, a research station being torn apart by gravitational anomalies. Each time, the desperate calls went out, and each time, human ships changed course to help. They weren't always successful. Sometimes they arrived too late. Sometimes the situation was truly impossible. But they tried. Always, they tried. Ambassador Han Sol presented a report to the Galactic Council about these incidents. Humanity cannot ignore distress calls, he explained. It's not in our nature. We hear someone crying for help and we respond, even when it's dangerous, even when it's illogical. This is inefficient, Counselor Thex observed. Your species wastes resources on low-probability rescue attempts. Maybe, Han Sol agreed, but we sleep better at night. The council debated for hours. Some argued that humanity's behavior was reckless. Others began to wonder if their own species had lost something important in their evolution toward pure efficiency. On the Wandering Stone, Deho was teaching young me how to repair a coolant valve. The young dragon was surprisingly good with tools, her small claws precise and careful. Why do you fix things yourself? She asked. Could you not hire others to do this work? I could, Deho said, but then I wouldn't know my ship. Every patch, every repair, it tells a story. This coolant valve failed on Kalor 9. This hull plate got scorched entering the atmosphere of Tyron 5 during an emergency medical delivery. These things remind me of why I do what I do. To help people? Yeah, to help people. Young Mai was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, why do humans help even when it is hard? Father says other species do not do this anymore. Deho sat back thinking. Because someone has to. Because we remember what it's like to need help and not get it. Because every human comes from a long line of survivors who helped each other through impossible situations. It's in our bones, kid. We're stubborn like that. I do not understand yet, young me admitted. You will, Deho said. Give it time. His communication console beeped. Another distress signal, this one from a passenger liner with engine failure. They were drifting toward a star, and their thrusters couldn't stop them. They had maybe 6 hours before they were pulled into the solar corona. Deho checked the distance. It was out of his way. He had a delivery to make. The profit margin on this cargo was already thin, and he couldn't afford more delays. He changed course anyway. Young Mai watched him, understanding beginning to dawn in her ancient young eyes. This is what it means to be human. Yeah, Deho said, pushing the engines to maximum. This is what it means to be human. Behind them, in his temple ship, Vaxrith felt the course change and smiled. The life debt would be difficult to repay because the human kept adding to it. Every rescue, every moment of compassion, every stubborn refusal to ignore suffering. Perhaps, Vaxrith thought, that was the point. Perhaps the debt wasn't meant to be repaid in currency or favors. Perhaps it was meant to be passed forward, paid to others who needed help, creating an endless chain of compassion across the stars. The galaxy was beginning to learn what it meant to have humans among them, not as warriors or conquerors or diplomats, but as something much more dangerous to the cold logic that had dominated for so long. They were learning what it meant to have hearthkeepers again. And in the darkness between stars, other voices began to call out, desperate, frightened, hoping against hope that someone would hear. And across the galaxy, human ships changed course, one by one, answering calls that had been ignored for far too long. Because that's what humans did. Because someone had to. Because they were too stubborn to know when to quit.